Awesome. Hello, everyone. We are here talking about growing awareness of DAOs. And I think growing awareness means a couple of different things depending on the audience that we're thinking about. Part of it is growing awareness within Web3. You know, how do we enhance the awareness of our DAO ecosystem, Solana DAO tooling across the crypto landscape? Oftentimes we hear when we talk to folks, hey, I didn't even know Solana had DAOs, had DAO tooling, has a DAO framework, let alone all of these amazing projects that are here today. And so question one is, how do we as an ecosystem work to bridge that gap? The second question though, and I think Barndog's experience will be really relevant to this, is how do we actually bridge the gap from Web 2 as well? You know, how do we make DAOs the starting point for a Web 2 user who's maybe not even looking to come into crypto, but through the power of community, through the power of these organizational structures, starts participating in crypto in maybe a unique to crypto way, and in such a way that they don't even realize they're interacting with an underlying blockchain. So that's kind of the context for this conversation. And I'd love to start with both of you just briefly introducing yourself. We've heard from me, we've heard from Stepan. So maybe Greg, you can start, and then we'll go to Barndog.
So good to be here. I'm Greg Miller, CTO of Tokr Labs. So we're open finance for real world assets. We were one of the winners of the Riptide Hackathon, and our consumer app just got SEC qualification last week. So we just think that fundamentally real estate should be a globally accessible, liquid marketplace, and we're building tools and experiences to enable that. So it's my background.
Greg actually joined me for the first run this week, and I know he can run and talk at the same time, so you can see he's at least fit as well. Barndog. So I joined Grape last year. I was there before it got tokenized. And I love the energy and how Dean and Wales actually, they reward energy. So one thing that we need to think about is when you get the people that come into the system is don't bottleneck it, allow them to do what they do. I'm a unique character. I'm an Aussie. I think of things differently. I come from a heavy industry background of mining and construction. And I'm a computer gamer. That's, for me, I'm a retail computer gamer, played World of Warcraft for 10 plus years, probably have 2 years of played time. And that actually was my exit and entry into crypto. I needed something to stop playing 9 World of Warcrafts at once. And that was crypto. So started on Binance, moved on to Solana very quickly, seeing the Solana gaming side of it, the TPS, the ability for it to be a gaming blockchain, and no one was really concentrating on the small games. It was all 1 or 2 big games, and there was 15 building out last year when I started. Now we've got hundreds. So, I spent a bit of time with Andrea from Grants, and they get 300 projects a month that they look at Solana. So, he's bottlenecked where he has to have people help him and stuff like that. There's all these great teams building out, but there's a problem of getting these teams access to come out of the community and stuff. But for me, Grape has been an amazing part. That's the reason I'm here in Athens to start off with. We just tied on a run, and we're doing that at Botanical Gardens, and a big shout out to TakiSol for making that happen. So I love what we've done at Grape, how we've managed to get some really great, amazing games and developers, and most of those people are all smarter than me sitting in a room. So it's awesome. At the same time, they've got a product, they want to talk about their game, they want to see it. We are in an exciting space where you can watch from the games that have been built from the 1980s up until now, all the hyperspeed is what blockchain gaming is. And how do we make all that better? How do we get more people into the space? And very, very lucky with Stepan that I kind of found them after a hackathon. And it was not love at first sight. It took a bit of time to get into it. But once I went deeper and deeper and stuff like that, the team's awesome, the game's awesome. And this is something that's 1/3 of the people are now crypto natives. So it is something that 800,000 daily active users, it's something that can really bring in people. And announcements this week, there's a 3rd blockchain possibly, and all these kinds of things. It's bringing people into the ecosystem, which benefits the whole crypto space and hopefully Solana as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. And with Stepan, I'd love to start there. So 800,000, I think you said weekly active users. I think I know the answer to this. Daily active users, even better. I think I know the answer to this, but in your opinion, what portion of these daily active users are kind of new to crypto folks? And if it is a sizable portion, what do you think Stepan has done to manage to convert so many new to crypto folks over to crypto?
So at the moment, nearing 1 million, that's large numbers. And where it's coming into onboard new people, so Web 2.0 it's a very basic game. 10 minutes a day, you get outside, you walk, you jog, you run. There's people that do this as a daily. There's people that do all these crazy marathons and super marathons, and Spartathlon comes out of Athens, starts out at Sparta. But there's already people that do this. You've got billions of people in the world, and everybody walks, everybody moves. And now they've just tokenized it and made a game out of it. And the gameplay is very, very in-depth. That's what's really hooked me into it properly, is that you can talk to an average user, then you can talk to a gamer, and then you talk to someone like me, and you just go kind of, wow, this guy's on crack. He loves it. So when I come from 9 World of Warcrafts, I need that trigger, I need that gameplay to go with it. And it's something that's basic. It all starts from 10 minutes a day, but then it's got layer upon layer upon layer. And it's not just about the money, it's about a full product. The health, the fitness, the mental health, these are things that people because it's a crypto game and started from crypto, you've got a lot of people that see the GST price goes down and it's very high on Binance, the alternative, and things like that. But at its core, it's a fitness app. It's an app that's designed to get your changing attitudes, to change that action. So once you start moving 10, 20 minutes a day, you do that for a period of 2 to 4 weeks, that changes your habit. That will become a habit that you want to do every single day. And then your body's going to be telling you to go out and do it. It doesn't mean you need the app to force you to do it. It's just tokenized it and given it a value for doing it at the same time.
Awesome. And then last question on Stepan before we get to this Stepan. For you, with these new users coming over from Web 2, what is the typical journey to finding out about Stepan and coming on board? I met someone who's here who knew nothing about DAOs, really knows nothing about crypto, saw a TikTok post about Stepan, downloaded it, and now is doing Stepan full time. It's basically become his job. Is it word of mouth? Is it channels like TikTok? How are these Web 2 folks finding out about Stepan?
That's a lot of it. And Logan, he's been with us the last couple of days, 21 travelled from Canada to Athens, and it's amazing. This will be an experience for his life he'll never take away. But how do they find out about it? All of the usual parts. The problem's not finding out about it. The problem's educating them and giving them sources. How do we set up a wallet? How do we join the game? What do we do with the wallet? People might want to cash out. They might want to swap their GST into USDC, and they're like, well, what do I do with it now? That's what we really need to encourage and teach the people is make sure there's a lot of scams. People are worried about crypto already. A lot of FUD surrounding crypto and blockchain and all that. So they're already nervous. Then they see people getting scammed, and then they see all these things. So it's about bringing them in safely is the important part. So YouTube, TikTok, we're starting to pump into Strava now. And Strava is the biggest app around the world for runners and cyclists. That's big. That's where you start going mainstream. So Stepan was more worried about, not worried, it started from the crypto natives. If the crypto natives don't understand it, how are the average users going to understand it? So you need a user base of people that can help the onboarding of the next user base of people. So a lot of people have been promoted this week in Discords. The Discord server's over 500,000. Sorry, it was 500,000, so it's locked out. They opened up a second Discord. Once you start hitting those kinds of numbers, you go, well, that's crazy, and then what happens from there? So it's big numbers and stuff, but it's the reason they started from the crypto native was to be able to make sure they could educate the next users. You can't bring in people into a complicated system. But now we've got this 6 months of gaming, and you've got people that can play the game and know the game, but then we get all these new active updates to it, and this is where the gaming side of it becomes a bit of a beast for me, and I love it.
Awesome. I really like the notion of starting with the crypto natives and then using them as the onboarding vehicle for Web 2 folks. With squads, you guys have over 2,000 squads on the platform, primarily smaller teams. Are these folks mostly crypto native folks, or some of them Web 2 folks? And just in general, what has been the key to sort of building that basis, that foundation of smaller teams coming and trying out squads?
I think definitely the majority is Web3 natives. That's because the ecosystem was looking for sort of like a multi-sig solution at some point. For many, they used individual wallets, centralized exchanges to custody team funds or to coordinate on team level. So it seemed like that kind of initial step was necessary, and so now it's and our focus as well in terms of marketing, content generation was focused on, internally on the ecosystem. But I think like we are starting to think about kind of, Stepan is a good inspiration for that, right? Like thinking about how you can leverage Solana's strength to actually bring in people that are not Web3 natives at all, right? And so we're kind of thinking about it from like a legal perspective on off-ramps support. And so kind of showing that, squads can be this like very easy onboarding layer for the Solana ecosystem. If you want to jump into building on Web3 and you're trying to choose a chain, come to Solana and it's going to be really easy if you just spin up a squad. I think that's like one of the sort of narratives we are looking at. But I think right now it's, mostly internal.
Yeah. And so when you say leveraging sort of the advantage that Solana has to onboard those new users, what do you have in mind when you say that?
Well, I mean, obviously the basics that it's high transaction throughput and that it's the transaction prices are low. I think that's kind of the main one. I think that allows us to obviously sort of minimize the cost for organizing all of your sort of on-chain activity that you need to do as a team. So in some other chains that would be more complicated from that onboarding perspective if like the entry barrier was higher. I do think that in general so for squads it's the idea that we can bring more things on chain, we can automate more things, we can make them sort of more transparent, and then kind of thinking as well whether a multi-sig can sort of be like a backend for more Web2 facing applications that can deal with like payroll or managing your sort of internal tasks and so on. I think like what Stepan has done for Orca is also very interesting, right? Because like Orca is sort of the backend for swaps and Stepan, and like the volume and the TVL because of that is supposedly massive, right? So I think that's also something which is like a great example how you can leverage Solana's infrastructure and then the primitives built on top of it to actually bring it to the application layer through some killer app.
Awesome. And then Greg, on your side of things, what is the thesis here around these real world assets, real estate? And then for you in terms of target customer base, are you looking at the Web2 user? Or is it more the crypto native user that you're going after?
Yeah, so real estate fundamentally has been one of the largest drivers of net worth for multiple generations. So as an asset class, it performs phenomenally well. It's usually not very correlated with the stock market. Tons of reasons to invest. So it's just as a class and an investment option, it's just a great choice. Not to mention it's where we everybody needs real estate options. It's where we work and live. So to speak about our customer base, it is fundamentally a Web2 audience. Actually, our consumer app is targeted at the TradFi space. We're turning $1 into 1 share of real estate equity. So those people come in with bank accounts. These are Web2 users. And actually, part of our onboarding process, we partnered with Web3 Auth, and we spin up Solana wallets for every single user. We think this space is moving to the most efficient exchange will be in the DeFi space, and so we need to give these people wallets. But these are people that come in, they're not even aware this is happening. I think that's part of what we have to do. And I think Barndog is actually a really interesting example. Is like he's there for the product, right? And you're seeing these Web2 users fight to create wallets because the product is so good. And so we're trying to do a similar thing, right? Like get people into the ecosystem, give them a wallet, and then eventually we'll be able to provide a ton of value. And this will be an obvious thing looking backwards that being in the Solana ecosystem is a smart place to be. Awesome. And you're focusing on the TradFi user, the Web2 user. How are they finding out about Tokr? What is kind of the onboarding flow for them? Yeah. So I mean, we're doing outbound marketing. We're also providing real estate developers that partner with our platform. We're essentially a marketplace, tools for them to be able to let our audience know that they have deals coming online. We have like a Instagram with an invest button type feel. So real estate developers can market themselves and become their own ambassadors. So that's kind of how we give them the tools to be able to promote themselves. So we're trying to do a similar model with letting our users promote what we're doing is kind of that's where the value creation is going to happen. So let them give them the tools to be able to get them into our ecosystem. Great. And so given all three of your experiences, I'm
I'm curious to hear, as we think about bridging this gap for Web2 users into DAOs specifically, and maybe the answer is, hey, there's a different starting point in Web3 that a Web2 user has to go to first before they start getting involved in a DAO. But let's just say we wanted to create that lineage straight to a DAO for Web2 users, for a Web2 user. What are the ways of going about that? Does it have to be this marquee DAO, like a Constitution DAO that gets a lot of PR and that's kind of a user's first step? Is it kind of leveraging existing communities like Facebook communities, converting those into DAOs? Is there some other way? Just given your experiences, I'm curious to hear.
Well, in our experience, right after Constitution DAO happened, the DAO season kind of began. Like it became really on top of everybody's minds. And in our Discord, 90% of requests about sort of asking like, how do we start a DAO? What do we do? Was really connected to the idea that it allows you, to do crowdfunding really easily without any sort of constraints or, kind of legal ramifications, I guess. And so that was like the major driver. And then it seemed like, people were looking for a mission for their DAO just because they really wanted to do the fundraise, which was, I guess it's a natural, effect after Constitution DAO did really well. I do think that case studies are great because they kind of showcase, people came together, found a mission for themselves, fundraised, and then did something or, tried to do something in the Constitution DAO situation. So I think that's probably from my experience, seems to be the best one. But again, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation as well, right? Like ideally you'd have a mission first and decide to organize around it and not kind of do it, from the other side.
Yeah, I guess one interesting thing that we're doing in our DeFi space is it's a product called Full Stack that allows people to place capital. It's much like Solana, but you end up investing into a real estate fund. And the process of going about that, we actually wrap it where you end up joining a DAO. And the reason we do that is you need a legal off-ramp into the real world. Should things happen, right? The real world is very messy. You need a way to enter the court system. And as Kyle and Jose talked about earlier in the week, right? DAOs, now that we have a legal structure, allow that to kind of take place. But I think it'll be really interesting, in our case, people are not joining a DAO to invest in real estate. They just want to place capital in real estate, and they end up joining a DAO as a byproduct. So I think we're going to end up having these kind of use cases where people will end up becoming part of these, DAO ecosystems. We'll onboard them there without them, wanting to, seek a DAO to do a thing. They're just going to want to do something and have this utility that, DAOs and their kind of legal structure bring into the real world.
There's, I guess, rewarding effort is a good part of it, but most of the people Web 2.0 aren't going to know about DAOs, so it's early, isn't it? One of the biggest things we've heard over the last week is that we need more people, we need more work, we need to reward that work, but just slowly keep doing what we're doing. Make it aware. You're going to onboard, if we're onboarding 30% new users into crypto through something like Stepan, then they're coming into crypto. They're curious people. These are daily active users. These are people that are getting outside with a phone and a GPS and earning crypto. So they're not a bot. They're a person. They're a real person. And we see an example today where we've got someone that's travelled from Canada to come to Greece for Stepan, and now he's learnt about DAOs. So it is actually a really perfect use case of it. Now he's going to travel to Paris and do the Paris event there. And we've only just started, realistically, even from my side of it. It's very complicated crypto. The average user won't get it, but there's going to be so many workforces behind it. Look at Grape, for example, Grape Protocol. It's a tokenized community. You've got videographers, designers, you've got people like me that just do AMAs and talk about games and interview gamers and teams. So really what we're doing is good, make people more aware, bring it out into the public and do it safely, onboard the people, give them the knowledge and empower them to make changes. So what we've seen with realms, squads, all these things, it makes it easier for them. That's the hard thing. Bringing in a crypto native doesn't want the complications that are crypto at the moment. It's very hard and daunting at the start. Just slowly ease them in and they'll find they might join a DAO that they really love. I found Grape, and if it's just investing in real estate to start off with, they might actually found, holy shit, I enjoy this, and they go a lot deeper and start to explore. They're the minds that we definitely want in the industry.
Yeah, we were having this debate at dinner last night when we talked about kind of this Web2 conversion into DAOs in terms of why does someone in Web2 even get involved in crypto in general, let alone DAOs, and what are some of those vectors? And one of the vectors we kept coming back to was the promise of financial gain. You know, it's with an NFT, you're hoping that NFT price goes up, you make some money. DeFi, sort of same idea. Even with Stepan, you know, it's not just, hey, go on a walk, it's hey, go on a walk and earn while you do so. Whereas DAOs, I think the financial link is a little bit more tenuous. It's hard to see that direct correlation. So one, do we feel like that direct correlation needs to be there to really get that mass adoption? And two, you know, if we do feel like that is a prerequisite, is there some way that we should be thinking about incorporating that into the dynamic of DAOs? Or maybe we say, hey, it's the ease at which you can come and be a contributor and make some cash on the side. So I'm curious to hear if you guys have any thoughts on that front.
Sure. Yeah, I think you have to start with aligning incentives, right? Like, and I think the product Leslie talked about yesterday with Moonlit is a perfect example of this, right? Like, people will want to become members of DAOs because they're aligning, you know, their skill set with an ability to be able to, you know, to make money, right? People are always going to try and optimize their time and energy. So I think, you know, fundamentally, one way or another, that could be social capital, it could be financial capital, but absolutely, you have to, you know, there has to be value on the back end of joining a DAO, that would, you know, whether it be financial, making money, or, you know, the social capital that comes with being part of the community and you know, member.
Yeah, and I think I kind of agree. I think like those things act as like a very good sort of glue for the community to come around and stay there. Like we've seen a lot of DAOs that just have the vibes and just have the, you know, good energy between them, but don't actually do anything, right? And I think those are just non-sustainable. So I do think like those incentives are important. At least, you know, if we lived in a world where everything like was run by DAOs and like it was very, you know, far along in advance, then that probably we can discuss kind of taking it to a different stage. But I think right now, having those incentives in place just really helps to grow the awareness, I guess.
For the incentives, it's hard. Talking about the NFT flipping, DeFi and all that, there are a lot of people that just want to get rich quick. Last year, we saw the NFT flip culture of Solana, and it really hurt, I think, gaming all round. And this year, there's a lot of games that are struggling with mints and all of that because they're building out. But a lot of people will come in, and giving them incentives is very good, but are those incentives sustainable to be rewarding the players? Not always, but it is a good way to at least monetize their time. So time is one of the biggest things in crypto that we have a lack of personally, and earning something for your reward. But we are getting people that are going, wow, we've got a chance to help govern, we've got a chance to pick the direction of this project, and I think that's important. So it's not necessarily always about the reward, but that reward in that sense would be having a voice and an opinion in a climate where, you know, everyone has different opinions on governments and where they are, and this is, you know, decentralized is good. It's hard when it then comes into being decentralized and how many votes and how they're all weighed up, and that is aligned to money in crypto. But definitely, I think. But there's a lot of curious people out there that will happily join into the systems and the ecosystems. If they're onboarded properly, they'll love to join into DAOs and find out about it, and that's good.
And I think like, I think like also the autonomy, like the word autonomous there, I think also is really important to many people, that like they don't actually rely on anyone else, and that it's like their you know, sense of ownership and sort of togetherness, which is kind of like makes them feel, you know, I'd rather contribute here and be part of that. So maybe it's not just about like economic incentives at that stage as well. So I think, that probably is another layer to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So we've spent a lot of time talking about kind of the Web2 conversion into DAOs. I want to switch gears into kind of Web3 awareness, knowledge of the Solana ecosystem, DAO ecosystem. If you look at NFTs, more and more we see folks who maybe were traditionally minting NFTs on Ethereum now saying, hey, Solana could be a better place to do that. Whereas I think the same hasn't happened in the DAO space, where there's still really that lack of awareness of our tooling, of our ecosystem. And so how can we bridge that gap? You know, how can, and maybe we say, hey, no, we're okay to just be heads down right now. We don't need to be proactively trying to bridge that gap. But, you know, if we were to try and thought it was valuable to bridge that gap, what are some ways that we could do that?
Yeah, so interesting discussion here. I think innovation is always going to outpace education. I think the per unit of time, the best thing we can do is keep building right now, right? Like build what, make realms, even more improved, right? Allow teams to be able to utilize those things, fork it, make new products. And if the products are good enough, people will find them and use them. So I think right now, especially in this market, the best thing we can do is just continue to be heads down and build, and then bring onboard people to the community that are going to be ambassadors of this stuff, right? Like Stepan has found an incredible partner in Barndog to be able to go out and tell everybody about this thing. So I think building is kind of the core of what we need to do, and then great products will incentivize people to come in and use them and then generate awareness. But I think it starts fundamentally with products.
To say to that, and this is part of the problem, is that there's so many teams that are heads down building. There's a lack of communication. So you might have a lot of games that don't know about the DAO structures that are built, and they're doing their own DAO systems. So there's a lot of tools that are being built that are great for them to be able to use, but they're building independent DAOs and spending a lot of their own dev time when that could be better put into their game, their product. We're seeing a lot of games thinking they need to build a metaverse, but instead they could be concentrating on joining other metaverses and looking at building their projects. So there's a lack of, I've seen it in different DAOs through the gaming side of it, where they don't have ideas of how do we build a DAO. It's still very early, isn't it? So to keep building is good, but we need to communicate it with the developers and the other teams, the projects that are developing, and do more of these, more hacker houses, make people more aware, more spaces, I guess. Spaces are hard because everyone's head down and building, so it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really? I guess we're too concentrating on what we're doing. We've got to make sure we open up to see what others are doing and take those successes to utilise their products rather than having to try and rebuild it and do the same thing twice.
I think the reason we like at this stage focusing on multi-sig squads is because it feels like we're solving existing pain points for teams that are already building stuff on Solana and kind of running into them. With DAOs, I think it's more complicated, right? Because we don't want to, you want to solve existing problems, but when you realize that you don't really know what a DAO really is, like what the structure really will look like for each community, it sometimes is harder. I think the best thing that we can do is kind of respond to existing communities and DAOs and not try to make them have a certain structure because we have the tools, but rather respond with the right tools to what they need internally to organize that, in the way that they want to organize, right? So I think we need to walk that balance. Definitely making people more aware of the tools that exist, I think, is important. I think those kind of events that we've done the last few days, I think those really help. But again, I guess case studies is probably the best one, right? Like showcasing that these guys have done that, they use those tools and it worked. That probably is the best marketing that you can have.
To your point, Barndog, around teams being very heads down, communication between teams maybe lacking because everyone's just focused on building. One of the things that I think is really interesting about our DAO ecosystem is how tight-knit we all are. We're all in the same room, we're all in the same Telegram channels. We all are kind of working together toward the same mission. And I spoke a little bit in my presentation earlier this week about the rising tide lifts all boats. Are there ways that we as an ecosystem can come together to really try to lift that tide and leverage the power of kind of the tight-knitness that we have to do more in lifting that tide?
Well, I think definitely from information is key here, right? We all talk to different communities, to different teams, to different DAOs, and I think having that kind of shared knowledge of where the ecosystem is going from user perspective of the tools that we're building, I think that's probably the most important thing we can do. And then obviously coordinating on the tooling integration level, how it all kind of connects in a one streamlined package.
Yeah, I also think that you see this in every innovation cycle where at the beginning, people are very cooperative, right? Even direct competitors, it's still useful. You look at their product, you're like, that's sweet, right? We want both to win. But eventually, a couple of years later, right, it's the opposite. It's very competitive. So I think right now we are, and should be in the cooperation mode, right? You want everybody in this space, to your point about rising tides, raise all ships. we need to know other people doing similar things in space and cross promote and kind of be as cooperative as possible, because this will be limited time. At some point, it's not going to be like this. So, got to take advantage of it in the early cycle of this space.
Yeah, I like the idea about the case studies, but even events like this help, because now there's several projects I've seen for the presentations that make me think about what I'm doing with that as an ambassador of Stepan, and it allows me to take other ideas to other areas and even other games across Solana. So there's that awareness and seeing it, and exactly that, being cooperative and passing on and looking at successful cases and going from there.
Last question on my end, and then we can open it up to the audience question. So this notion of case studies have come up a few times. Constitution DAO being this kind of big pillar that people look to, drove a lot of DAO activity. Stepan in the same way, this one product bringing in a ton of new users into crypto. Is there a way for us to try to incentivize these sort of Constitution DAOs or these marquee DAOs on Solana, or is it purely an organic thing that once someone has that idea, there should be a groundswell of activity, and all of a sudden someone has that idea and it sort of comes about organically? Or is there something we could proactively be doing to try to promote more of those case study type DAOs?
There's grant systems in there now, DAO grant systems. That's one where people can go off and hack and solve problems that are put out.
You even saw it in the last presentation or two presentations ago with Dean talking about it, right? Like, you could create these interesting kind of token incentives to try and get people to create sub DAOs specifically for promotion and those things. So I think, again, fundamentally you have to align the incentives, but now we've got the tools to be able to do this effectively and organize effectively. So I think it'll be really interesting. I would be surprised if in a year from now there aren't new models for being able to promote effectively tying it back to some reward system.
Yes, I think that's definitely all important. That, though, I think tackles it from again, kind of tooling side, saying here are the tools that we built, come create a DAO around them. I think considering how many NFT communities we've got on Solana, and I think there's going to be more in the coming sort of weeks and months, an interesting way to go about it maybe could be to see, because those DAOs right now, they have different focus, and potentially routing them in a direction where they can have a more complex organizational structure and have basically help them to realize the vision that they might not yet actually have, but kind of show them the different possibilities that they can have with the tools that we provide. I think that's probably another approach to do, right? To go out to existing DAOs or communities that haven't really DAOified and just kind of try and talk to them and see where we can take them forward with what we've built.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think part of it too, that your point on case studies is a great one. Just highlighting even the DAOs that exist within Solana now and get people thinking about, hey, what's possible in using a DAO structure? Let me see what other communities have done. And one of the things we're doing is thinking through, hey, are there dedicated podcasts, like a How I Built This series about folks in their DAOs? Are there dedicated marketing channels we can go through to promote a lot of the activity we already have in this space to spur new thought, new innovation to come into it? So we'll pause there panel-wise. Any questions from the audience on this topic?
This, I guess, can go to each of the three of you. If I have one link to send to someone who doesn't know anything about DAOs on Solana, what's the one link that you send them to? And this is assuming that they're a web2 user, not a web3 user. I assume each of you will have different answers.
Is that specifically about DAOs on Solana in terms of tooling, in terms of which DAOs exist?
They know nothing. And I should add, I guess a parameter on the question is not for them to learn about your specific project, but as the ecosystem as a whole.
Well, we have a channel in Discord which deals with that. There's a sort of step-by-step, there's the first link will be just generally about sort of Web3 and DAOs, and then we'll kind of dive into the tools that we have in the ecosystem. But I think having a dedicated landing page that kind of shows you what you can do and kind of gives you all the right information, I think that's I don't think we have that, so that would be really, really helpful for sure.
I think this is a great question. I know you asked for the three panelists. I'm gonna take my stab at the answer as well. I think if it's truly a Web2 user, they want to learn about DAOs, and I could send them one link. I probably wouldn't send them a Solana link, to be honest. I probably would send them a link to Links DAO or a DAO like that, where it's very, very easy to tell, hey, I'm a member in this DAO. This is what I'm getting from the membership. This is why it's decentralized. And I think that's the best starting point for starting to conceptualize what a DAO can really do.
The hard thing for me is I am a Solana maxi, and I would probably send them to Grape and the actual Grape YouTube. But I like, if you're not trying to plug one particular DAO, but we don't have it, and I like, it's probably a good idea that we do have a Solana what is a DAO YouTube channel, but then you could have a multitude of YouTubers post on that. This is what I like about the Grape protocol one, is that it's linked up to 4 or 5 YouTubers in there, and there's some shorts, and people can see that, look, you can look at gaming, you can look at Whales Friend, you can look at Metaverse, you can look at a multitude of different streamers rather than just one. And there's highlights and short, people don't like long-winded hour videos, so they don't always come to Barndog because I talk a lot.
Yeah, I think I would follow what Emon's doing. Send them to one, the most interesting use case. Either Links DAOs, really they do a great job presenting themselves. But even something like drop them into the Ukraine, DAO and Realms, like people are going to be interested with that. What's that? On Nation, yeah, okay. So let them go down the rabbit hole and see like what interesting use cases DAOs can provide and facilitate. So it might be not the best, like from a consumption standpoint, but I think it'd get the wheels turning and it'd be actually the most effective way to educate them.
I think I'm going to answer a question from my perspective, if you don't mind. So Super Team DAO has a really, really, really great resource for just DAO onboarding and all that stuff. It's groundzero.superteam.fun. And it takes you through like, what is blockchain? How is it useful? What's the deal with DeFi? Like, everything, and then into a DAO.
Any last questions? Awesome. Well, really fascinating discussion. I think a lot of takeaways to pursue, even in our conversations at lunch and stuff. I think generally, as we talked about, the rising tide, I think, will be really important coming together as an ecosystem, at least until it becomes more competitive in a few years' time. But it's a good problem to have in a few years' time. So really appreciate you guys taking the time again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys.